Hello, yes, it's me again. I wanted to make this video because it's just something that I think about a lot. I don't know why, but my feelings on the Frozen franchise have always been super mixed. Since I came out of the theater in 2012, was it? I'm like, do I like it? Do I dislike it? Do I hate it? And for a while there, like a lot of people who just didn't love it, I did kind of hate it. Just because, it was everywhere. The hype was insane. And so if you don't absolutely love it, you're just kind of annoyed by how much people love it. I'm 19 now. I'd like to think I'm pretty self-aware of my opinions. But I think I finally figured out where I stand on it. Why does it matter? It doesn't, because it's a movie for children. But for some reason, Frozen has taken up a lot of space in my head as I try to figure out what I feel about it. And maybe that's because of all the attention that it gets. I second guess myself and I'm like, do I really dislike it? And at this point I say, I don't love it. I might even dislike it a little bit. But I finally figured out why exactly that is. Frozen 2 is a whole other story. Frozen 2 is garbage. It belongs in the trash. I hate it. It killed my family. And it deserves... It doesn't even deserve to be a straight-to-DVD sequel or whatever. Like the original Disney sequels. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. It haunts me. I think that I'm done talking about it, but it's still there. It's lurking over my shoulder, watching me, reminding me of how much work went into it and how much money it made, even though it has trash writing. So we might get into that a little bit. I actually have a few things to say about the original Frozen, and now they're all gone from my head for the moment. As for like minor things that I have problems with, I think the songs are pretty weak. I didn't like Love is an Open Door and For the First Time in Forever, mostly just because they had those little moments of like slang terms in them, which was kind of annoying in a Disney movie. I don't hate Anna as a character. I don't hate the idea that it explores of Anna, who's lived a life of severe isolation, has become someone who very, very much wants to interact with the world to the point where she's naive and puts herself in danger of Hans by being too eager to fall in love. And then you have the flip side of Elsa, who, having been through a life of severe isolation, has drawn into herself and is very, very frightened of the world, including herself. So I think that's a cool idea. I think Hans is a lame villain. I think the movie wanting to surprise us and subvert Disney expectations resulted in a super weak villain who history only remembers as a plot twist. But again, I think if you had some of the other problems of the movie, like the pointless trolls or the pointless trolls song, if those still existed, I think I could still like it if the center of the story was still good. The center of the story, of course, being Elsa, which is not good, in my opinion. And again, it took me a while to really pinpoint what I didn't like about her arc, or really non-arc. And I think that was the problem. I came out of the theater very much feeling like Elsa hadn't really gone through a complete arc, like something was missing here. For a while, I really liked seeing some of the cut songs and the behind the scenes stuff from the original. Like Life's Too Short is a cut song that was replaced with, for the first time in forever, Reprise. And it basically had both Anna and Elsa kind of being jerks, like Elsa refusing to listen to her sister about what the storm was doing, and then Anna singing about how she should put the gloves back on and everything should go back to the way it was, even though Elsa was not happy the way it was. And I really liked that we saw a side of both of them that was a little unlikable, a little flawed, but still the problems with Elsa stand. If I'm going to talk about the problem that I have with Elsa's character, I'm going to tell a little story, a little anecdote about my problems with Elsa. I thought of this time in my drama class back in high school where we had to write a really short play. I don't think there were any requirements. I think it was just a play about anything. And I wrote a little short play about a girl who snapped at a partner in a group project at school or something. And then the rest of the day, basically, she just ruminates, as psychologists will say, about why she did that. And she's really anxious about what that person thought of her, and she's really frightened that they think that she's rude, and she didn't like the fact that she said that, and she wonders what they think of her, and she's just really torn up about it, kind of unreasonably so. If you couldn't guess, I did take inspiration from my own life because I was a really anxious kid. I still am, a slightly older, still anxious kid. But the point is, I was trying to tell a story of somebody who was unreasonably anxious about something that most people would think nothing about. And the climax of the play, climax is a small play, but was basically her sister telling her, why are you freaking out over this when you could just ask him what he thought of that? And that was it. It was literally supposed to be just an epiphany sort of moment for the character of her realizing, oh, I'm actually overthinking this. I could just simplify it and just ask someone straight out because that's how normal people work. And a lot of the criticisms I got, because we did peer review for these plays, were that the climax was really weak, was that the conflict was kind of a non-conflict, it wasn't exciting, there wasn't a whole lot there, basically. And on the one hand, I completely understood that, because, again, from someone who hasn't experienced that would seem very not a big deal. It's just, from my perspective, it exemplified a lot of my experience, especially in high school. And so that moment in that class sort of made me realize what the problem was with Elsa's character. Because, just to lay it out, I don't like Elsa's character in Frozen. I think she's very one note. There's not a lot to her. All she does is kind of be wishy-washy and sing or talk about how she's afraid of her power. She's afraid of what she'll do to people. She's afraid of what people will think of her. She's afraid. That's the whole thing. For the first time in Forever Reprise, they're really lazy with it lyrically. She just sings, there's so much fear, while her sister is blindly telling her it's okay, everything's okay, while Elsa just refuses to even try to lift the storm, risking people's lives, kind of. And it just came off as very selfish. And so you'd expect something, you expect the resolution of her character arc to be something along the lines of realizing what's going on around her, fixing it, something that's a little more slow and gradual than, oh, love is the answer and that fixes everything. That's great. All I needed to do was think positive. And the problem with this is that it's not a character, it's a non-character. She earns nothing in the story. She has no traits outside of her powers. And she just comes off as selfish and bland, you know? And a lot of critics of the movie who say this often get, what's the word? I know words. Often get told, I'm just gonna say, often get told that, well, that's what having depression is like. She has depression, so that makes sense. And to be fair, it does somewhat if you just explain her character with she has depression, so of course she's going to be irrational. Of course, she's not going to take in what everyone says super well because she's very focused inward. Not to say that I have experience with mental illness insanely, especially depression, but that's the idea that I get from what people are saying. And again, it's like it makes sense when you think about it. But that still doesn't take away the fact that leaving the audience, I felt unsatisfied with her character arc. You know, and I think I've realized that's the problem with writing mental illness, especially in a movie meant for children or meant for a wide audience, is that mental illness isn't that interesting, plot-wise. I mean nothing against people with mental illness. I'm not saying that you aren't people or anything. I'm just saying, narratively, a character with depression who has no conflict other than their depression is not that interesting to someone who doesn't understand. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have characters in fiction who have mental illnesses. Obviously, it grows us as a society, it makes us more empathetic. But Elsa wasn't a character who happened to have depression, who was fighting other things. Her mental illness was her whole character. That was it. And that's my problem. I feel like, again, a lot of shows meant for a wide audience who try to tackle depression or something along those lines, it feels like, as an audience member, it feels like they're just using a mental illness to excuse lazy writing. You know? Like, again, I haven't watched the show in its entirety. I'm not super well versed, but I hear a lot of this discourse around the She-Ra reboot from Netflix. A lot of people will be like, oh, Catra's problematic, she does these things, she's not redeemable, whatever. While the other side of the fandom will be like, she was abused, that should be taken into account. And it's like, there's gotta be something in the middle where it's like, you know, people can go through things mentally and psychologically while still being human beings. You know, especially in fiction, with mental illness, as well as with other difficult topics. I feel like fiction writers tend to say, oh, it's realistic, it's fine if they don't end up together, it's fine if this person acts irrationally because it's realistic, it's gritty, it's the reality of the world, whatever. When I'm like, this isn't reality though, this is fiction. And when somebody's watching, reading, listening to, whatever, their fiction, they want to feel satisfied by the end. Even if it's not happy, it should have a satisfying ending. It should mean something. You can't just throw words on the page and say it's fine if they don't go anywhere because life is like that. This isn't life, this is fiction. And fiction is meant to focus on a story, begin it and end it for a reason. End it, you know, it's like the whole argument over, it's fine that these characters didn't end up together because they're teenagers and relationships don't last forever, whatever. But like, there were the relationship within this story. We were focusing on them. So it feels really weird if they end before the story ends. Then you would have ended it when they ended. It just doesn't make sense to me. Back to what I was talking about. Elsa. So this is my problem. It's not that she has depression. I think, for one thing, I think if you are someone who has experienced depression, maybe knows someone very well who has experienced it, and wants to write a story specifically about battling depression, a mental illness type book, I think you should absolutely do that if you feel the urge to tell your story. Like in memoir or in fictionalized memoir, whatever. I also feel that you can 100% have a character who happens to have depression or another mental illness while they're battling other things. I think that makes perfect sense. I think having an entire conflict surround a person's battle with themselves, mental illness, doesn't work 99% of the time. Even if, and trust me, as a kid with anxiety who like to write fantastical things, I understand when you think you have an idea where like, oh, I know how to illustrate this mental illness perfectly within like fantasy rules, like, oh, she hears voices, but really they're like the voices of a ghost. So it fits within the world, but it illustrates mental illness. I would advise against it. I also don't think that it will work. Because then you might run into a problem, which I think Frozen runs into, where at the end, she realizes her sister loves her and she's magically able to lift the storm. And it very much comes across as like, oh, that's so easy. Wow, depression is so easily solvable. All you gotta do is know that people love you. Boom. Fixed. Like, it's just very oversimplifying, and I'm sure that wasn't their intention. It's just, once again, it feels like you're using that as a cover to be lazy. So, yeah, I think if Frozen would have worked for me, personally, I think that Elsa should have been established as a character outside of her mental illness. And to demonstrate that, I think of Beauty and the Beast, another Disney movie which I do think can be interpreted as a story involving depression. I think it's perfectly plausible that you could read the Beast as having depression. I personally don't, but I really think that you could. Because he battles with anger issues stemming from his bestial form, as well as a life of severe isolation and obvious low self-esteem because of the image that he's seen of himself for years and years and years, blaming himself for being that image because the enchantress told him to blame himself, essentially. We want to talk about selfishness there. So yes, Beast battled with those demons. He battled within himself. That's always important with a character. He had a more physical conflict to get over. He had to find someone that he could fall in love with, who could fall in love with him before the last petal fell. So you have somebody with a physical conflict as well as an internal conflict. And then you also have a very clear ticking time bomb that establishes stakes. When that last petal falls, he's a beast forever. We don't know if that just means cementing what has already been going on, or if that means he's going to lose his human sentience entirely. Doesn't matter. We know that it's bad. While Frozen failed to establish anything like that, again, Elsa is a sort of villain, but she's not really a villain. She doesn't mean to do all these bad things. So then there's also a lot less agency, and you don't have established stakes. Like, we don't know how long this storm will last. We don't know if it'll go away within a few days. We don't know if it'll change with their emotions or whatever. Nothing is established. Again, in the Life's Too Short version of the story, they did have a prophecy that said it would be an eternal winter, which I think would have done this perfectly fine. But we don't have any of that. We just have a very nebulous, abstract conflict of Elsa being afraid of her powers and that making things worse. It's not an interesting conflict to me. You have to either give me something physical for her to beat while she's battling in her demons, or even, like, make her a full-on villain. I don't know. Because then she is the physical obstacle, very intentionally doing things because of these inner battles. Wow, actually, Beauty and the Beast kind of illustrates all of my problems with Frozen. Hans is also very much like Gaston, because he's like the villain who you're obviously supposed to compare to the depressed character, for lack of a better term. Like, Hans is obviously like, oh no, he's the bad guy, not Elsa. She's done nothing wrong, even though she's put people's lives at risk. She's done nothing wrong. Hans is the real bad guy. Even though he's not bad until the last 20 minutes of the movie. So, like, yes, Gaston is obviously, like, we're supposed to compare him, like, he's the real monster, not Adam / the Beast, who is very torn up inside and does some bad things, which are acknowledged. Very important, being acknowledged. But he's not the root of the evil. Gaston is the one who's rounding people up and trying to shoot this animal he doesn't even know is threatening him or not. And the difference there is that Gaston has a lot more time to be evil. He has a whole song. And even in the beginning, we know that he's, like, not a cool guy. Even if maybe, I don't know, I don't even remember a time when I didn't know how Beauty and the Beast ended, but maybe in the beginning you could be like, oh, okay, he's a misogynist and annoying, but maybe that's all he is, you know? Maybe he's not gonna end up being, like, the big baddie. So yeah, that's my main problem with Frozen. But to be fair, it's not, like, a problem that would make me hate the movie. I don't hate it. I just don't really like it that much. Frozen 2, however, is another story. I hate it so much. I hate Frozen 2 so much. And it sucks because I love the animation and the music, which are great and made by very talented people. And the writing is garbage. It's garbage. Nothing ever makes sense. It's like Elsa is the fifth spirit, and she and Anna are two parts of the same bridge. She's not, you know, Elsa's really special and overpowered, and she gets to live in the forest and have this big moment. But Anna's special too, okay? She's also part of the bridge, even though she didn't get cool powers. Just say that the powers were a bad thing, you know? And why did we go with elements? Why did we go with elements? The original story is called The Snow Queen. It's a winter thing. She's winter. She's the epitome of winter. She controls winter. She doesn't control... I don't really know what the fifth element was supposed to be. Is it water? That's already an element. Ice? That's still water. Wind, I guess? No, wait, we already got that, didn't we? Because Gale. Oh my god. I just don't understand it, you know? Nothing was explained. I still don't understand Show Yourself. I don't understand. What happened there? What happened? We got, like, her mom's voice singing to her since the beginning of the movie, so you think it's gonna be like her mom's spirit or something. I actually, when I first started hearing the song, I thought it was going to turn evil. Like we were going to get a cool twist where it was some evil spirit that was misleading her this whole time. But no, it was some weird coming into her identity song. Very vague. It was like, I guess it's supposed to be her, or like Holland calling to her. Holland speaks now. We have glaciers that have sentience. How does that work? Never explained. Nothing's ever explained. Like, we don't... Water has memory. That was not, like, reached as a natural conclusion by the characters. Olaf just said that, and we're like, okay, this is part of the world now. This is a world-building rule. Got it. And also, Elsa shouldn't be able to control water, so it doesn't matter. She controls ice, because that's part of winter. There's no water in winter. It's all frozen. I don't get it. And Anna literally did nothing. There was no character progression. That was my problem. We could have fixed Elsa's character if we let her be more than depression, like in the first one. Like, maybe that was just her starting point, and we really see her, like, try and prove herself, try and save people, when it's just her becoming comfortable with herself again. We already covered that. And Anna proved that she's willing to do anything for her sister. We already knew that. The first song we hear is Some Things Never Change, which is an obvious, like, foreshadowing that things are gonna change, you know? And then nothing changes. We didn't even get to destroy Arendelle. What the heck? We could have done like a Thor Ragnarok thing where, you know, Arendelle isn't the city, it's the people. That would have been cool. I hate it. And I hate hearing Into the Unknown and Show Yourself a billion times a day. Not gonna lie. I think they're great songs. They're super catchy and pretty. I think they do nothing for the characters. Into the Unknown is super, super literal. It's very much like, there's this voice. Should I follow it? Should I not? It's like, really, you couldn't have come up with a more creative way for an inciting incident. Your inciting incident is a voice telling her to go this way. Where's the character agency? And maybe it would have been a fine inciting incident for me if, again, the reveal of who the voice was, what it was, had been really interesting and made sense. But it didn't. It didn't make any sense. I still don't understand. And I swear, if somebody tells me, like, well, it was herself and she needed to come into her destiny. If you need to explain it, if you need to explain the climax of a Disney movie to me, a 19-year-old woman, it wasn't a good climax. It was Kristoff. Like, he didn't even need to be in the movie. He had no conflict except wanting to propose, which is a fine conflict. I'm fine with him having a simpler conflict than the others. But we just forget about him for like half the movie, and then he's over his conflict. There was no scene of him getting over it. He just got over it off screen. It was great. Well, people have discussed that. What people will not discuss is how Anna got no character progression either. Which, again, maybe you want to have a character that doesn't change, especially out of the duo. But if she doesn't change, and Elsa doesn't change, and Kristoff doesn't change on screen, what's the movie about? It's about colonialism. Got it. I guess we're done here then. Like, what? It's doing the same thing the first one is. At least it feels like it, where you are depending on this greater message that's all deep and meaningful and edgy, so you don't have to make it about the characters. You can make it about the world, and we live in a society. Got it. Like, if you don't know, the whole the whole conflict is that Elsa and Anna had a grandfather who was in a time of, who had a treaty, kind of? I think it was a treaty. Who had a treaty with the, I forgot their names. I forgot their names. Oh no, I'm gonna get dragged on Twitter. Northaldrins. I got it! Who has like a time of peace with the Northaldrins, who are basically stand-ins for North American natives. Which doesn't really make sense because we're in Norway. Their natives are different from North American natives. Which, like, to be fair, they based them on the Sami, who are actual natives to Norway. And from what I can tell, the Sami people were totally cool with this representation. They gave their approval and everything, even though the Northaldrins' design were like, again, like the North American natives. They were dark-skinned and dark-haired, even though the Sami are white. But again, you could have saved it if it was a good story. And it wasn't a good story. We didn't even really get to know the Northaldrins. I don't know anything about Ryder or Honey Lemon. No. Honey Marin, sorry. And the whole conflict, the whole big twist, is that Anna and Elsa's grandfather, who they heard stories about within this movie, it was never set up in the other movie, but they heard stories about him in the in the prologue sort of scene, and they thought he was a good guy. Turned out he wasn't, and he killed the leader of the Northaldrins, and that incited a conflict. And apparently they built a dam or bridge. It was a dam. And Anna realizes the dam is what's causing the spirits to be angry, and she needs to destroy it, so she gets the rock giants to destroy it, and she does. And that's it. That's it. Damn. It's so easy. Like, that's such a... There's no internal conflict there. There's no internal conflict there, except that Anna is sad that Olaf and Elsa are dead. Except they're not really dead, because nothing changes in this movie. She doesn't care about her grandfather in particular, at least it doesn't seem like she does. She never talked about how much she loved Arendellian history in the first one or in this one. That's kind of it. She needs to destroy this dam purely because she knows it's hurting the Northaldrins. We don't know why it's hurting them. That's also never explained. It's just, it really messes up their feng shui, and the spirits are angry about that, I guess. Like, I don't know, if you just given me something, like, it's preventing fish from entering our rivers or something, and it's starving us, that'd be stakes. But it's just a purely point A to point B type conflict. Like, I have to destroy the dam because white supremacy is bad. Boom. Movie. Billions of dollars. I hate it. It's so lazy. Again, maybe it would have worked if we had established Anna as somebody who really, really took Arendellian history seriously and put a lot of trust into her ancestors, then realizing that they did something that hurt these people would mean something. But none of this movie means anything, except for money. Also, it's like, I don't know. Elsa and Anna's mom, who was originally a Northaldrin, so basically a native of Norway, fell in love with this Arendellian and then went to live with him and dress like his people and participate in his culture primarily and never go back to her own people. That's kind of a bad look, isn't it? Isn't it? And are we gonna pretend that we completely planned on Anna and Elsa's super white mother being a coded North American member of a tribe. I don't. It feels very hammed in. Does not feel normal or natural at all. Especially when in the original, Anna and Elsa's parents were very, very flawed. I'm sorry, you cannot argue with me otherwise that what they did to their daughter was right. You can say that maybe they meant well and they just didn't understand her powers and they put the gloves on and taught her not to feel because they didn't know any better. Absolutely, you could have said that. That would have been an interesting, nuanced conflict. But instead, we have them be a Romeo and Juliet couple that brings people together and is perfect, who told their kids stories and who loved their kids and who sang to their daughter from a glacier, but also it wasn't her, it was Elsa and the spirit and the other spirit. I don't know. You can't tell me that those were good parents. Or at least parents who did good all the time, you know? And we didn't even acknowledge that, we just kind of retconned it. I hate this movie. Again, I dislike Frozen. I absolutely despise Frozen 2. I just wanted to get it out, I'm sorry. Every time I think that I've gotten out, it's still there because it haunts me. There does feel like there could have been a lot of potential for it. I can't handle thinking about how bad it is. Talk about it in the comments if you want. But don't be mean to me, okay? I just talk about what I want and receive no criticism, ever. The end. See you guys.